Very good morning, everyone. Charles here, Frgnt Daily Chart Analysis. The time is just approaching 9:30 local time in the UK, Thursday the 18th of June 2026. It feels a while that I've done a video breaking down some charts on TradingView. Nevertheless, the summer period is a busy period, so I'm out and about. You may hear some background noise, so apologies in advance regarding that. However, we are still speculating the markets, and this morning I've just closed a position at a little bit shy of 3%. I must admit my entry wasn't to pinpoint accuracy, of which you'll see there based on that 15-minute order block. But the thought process was pretty good. Some of the illustrations from yesterday's live breakdown call are still on there, but pretty much Gbpcad, it's a textbook position, more so based on the 15-minute time frame. We'll talk about that in just a moment. However, higher time frame analysis really stemming from that daily time frame. We've got the daily order book. If I make this slightly smaller, again, you'll have to excuse me on my MacBook, not so much my screens, but we have traded out of this higher time frame daily order book. We came in, we came out, we've made loads from that area, and I've kept that on the charts simply because prices failed to break above that area. Therefore, for me, until we break above that area on a daily time frame by way of daily candle closure above that area, I am still very much so sell bias from that area. However, as I always say, just because I'm sell biased doesn't necessarily mean I need to be taking an immediate short position. I need confirmation. Can I then seek to find that confirmation on a lower time frame, perhaps on the 4 hour? The 4 hour time frame, in the immediacy, we were incredibly bullish, and therefore it was difficult really to understand the structure points on that 4 hour time frame. But the key coming out of the market, not so much in terms of trend lines, but what I did need to see was at least some form of break of structure, just by eyeball, sometimes via the optics. If structure fails you, is, I wouldn't say good enough, it's a good place to start. So on the 4 hour time frames, if I was just to base this simply just at looking at the chart, of course I will say higher high. I'd be looking for price to make a higher low, perhaps for a higher high continuation. Now, if I take that a little bit more in terms of intricacies, I'd be putting a line in the market around about here. And what I'd be saying was, well, for a considerable amount of time, price is failing to break and close below even these areas. So therefore, until I see price breaking those areas in the market, I am not going to be able to trade with the full degree of confidence based on the confluence coming out of the charts. Now, to support the first structure point in the market, what does that mean? Well, I am seeing a bearish engulfing candle on that 4 hour time frame that wiped out a good couple of days worth of price action. Therefore, that is a first sign of confirmation that I have that Gbpcad could well potentially be ready for a turnaround. Now, that's just on the 4 hour time frame. What I would have loved to have seen is, in fact, price actually break that 4 hour 50 EMA as well, and then we'll be looking for the pullback for the short. However, what I figured was, if I am going to take a short position, I need to understand where my limits are and where my targets are. Where could I really foresee price to gravitate back down towards? And the first thing I'm looking at is exactly this 4 hour 50 EMA. How is that 4 hour 50 EMA performing, and how is it affecting price action? Well, the simple thing for me to suggest and say, based on looking at price action, is that price is respecting that 4 hour 50 EMA towards the upside. Therefore, when price gravitates back towards that area, I need to be thinking about managing my position, or if I'm already not at, or rather if I am already at a significant risk to reward ratio that I like, then perhaps I may well be looking to close that position out. And the sneak preview, I've already done so. So now using all of this as confluence and taking that down to the lower time frames, what do we have? Well, we need to have a look at structure points on that 15-minute time frame to understand and see if that makes sense. So based on basic price action and structure, what's going on? You see the illustrations are still there. This was a key structure point in the market, and the first question is, well, why is that a key structure point? Well, based on basic price action and structure, we had higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, confirmed by way of higher high. Therefore, this remains a key structure point in the market. And therefore, until this structure point in the market is broken, any positions I'm taking excuse me, it's going to be classed as an aggressive position. Why? Because I do not have a break of the most recent high low, of which is now being caused here, the first low in the market, wait for a low, of which that is a break of structure. Has that low been created by way of 15-minute order block? Can I locate that up at the highs? If I have that criteria, the setup is confirmed, and my entry criteria is just down to my risk of how I'd want to take that. Do I want to wait for a lower time frame break of structure? Do I want to take that as a limit order if I feel that that is one of the highs in the market perhaps? Or do I want to wait a little bit more to see if we're going to break some structure points and then pull back for then trading by way of price already in a developed trend? So you see the outcome at the moment. What I did was I didn't take that as a limit. I must admit I was very tempted to. I took it. We were on a live call this morning, and Gcad I think was the first pair that we discussed, second pair after GU in terms of favorites for the day. So I was very much so eyeing that. The alerts have all disappeared now as a result of triggering. Nevertheless, you see down here, just within that area, you see that refined 1 minute time frame. More happened on the 1 minute as price came into that 15-minute order block, the order block that of which broke structure points to the left hand side. Bearish engulfing candle on the 1 minute time frame, waiting for price to retrace back up into that imbalance of that 1 minute candle, and I took the short position, and that trade has now been closed out. The stop loss was 20 pips, entry was slightly lower, and as I said, it was just shy of 3%. So there we go. As a result of waiting or waiting for price to gravitate down towards that 4-hour 50 MA before waiting for price to close out. Now, that's that position. Good, move on. GU, another bit of a favorite for the day. GU and EU, even UJ. To be fair, there are a lot of good favorites on the charts, and it's a shame I'm going to be traveling out and about. I'm not going to be active on the chart, hence why I actually took that GCAP position sooner rather than later today. More often than not, I would not be trading before my session, but as a result of having to be on the move in a moment, I figured that would be my only real opportunity to take a position during the day, whilst really just sat down doing not too much at all, just looking at the charts. So where are we here and now? Of course, we had those parabolic moves yesterday as a result of DXY strength coming out of the market, and we're seeing those drops in the market on those cross pairs. So GU, where are we in terms of, in fact, let's go with EU. That's more in my mind at the moment. So EU, the reason why I like EU more so for the shorts compared to GU. So GU, I wouldn't mind the longs. EU, I much prefer the short position. Look at the weekly 50 MA. Now, top right hand chart, what is the performance of that weekly 50 MA? Well, most recent candles closed below that weekly 50 MA, and of course we're rejecting that weekly 50 MA now towards the downside. Therefore, I would love to take a short using that weekly 50 MA as confluence. However, what must be said is we are now in and operating within a daily order block, which is looking to take price towards the upside, and we still have not closed below that daily order block. Let me just refine that ever so slightly so we can see it correctly. There we have it. So we're still failing to break and close below that daily order block that would potentially take price towards the upside. So our trading range is quite small. Therefore, if I'm going to be needing to take a position short, I have to ensure that I'm not within that daily order block. I'm very much so need to take it from the area that it's located at the moment, that 4-hour order block refined within the 15. So that's the daily time frame as well, weekly time frame, as well as the daily time frame. What's going on with the performance of the EMA as well? Most recently, we still are closing and rejecting that daily 50 MA to the downside. Therefore, if price wants to gravitate back up towards that daily 50 MA, of course, I'm expecting a reaction towards the downside. Let me draw an illustration so you can see it. Break below the daily 50 MA, come back in rejection, break below daily 50 MA, come back, rejection, break below the daily 50 MA. I'm expecting a pullback for a rejection. However, as we've said, the caveat to that is the fact that we are trending into now a higher time frame daily order block. So that's certainly something going against the position at the moment. However, now in terms of deciding whether it makes sense to take that short position, because that's the forecast element of the trader of myself, so I'm forecasting where price will go. Now the trader element is very much so important to decipher whether or not that position actually makes sense to take. So what's structure doing first and foremost on the 4-hour time frame? Can I read structure in its most basic format? Well, price at the moment, we made a low in the market, price came back up for a lower high, and now technically, and using the facts, we are now in the realms of making that lower low. So after a lower low, what am I expecting? A lower high. Does that make sense? And where could that lower high take me into? Well, we have the 4-hour 50 MA there supporting short position. We also have that weekly 50 MA, as we've already disclosed, supporting price to the downside for the entirety of this trading week, with the close of business coming by way of tomorrow on Friday. And then the third element of that is, do I have an order block to potentially short from to support that? Yes, we do. As a result of that bearish engulfing candle yesterday, we have a 4-hour order block that I'm going to be using to manipulate the shorts down. And then once we refine this 4-hour order block down, do I have a 15-minute order block there available for me to take? And there you see it just there. So does that make sense now, even on the 15-minute time frame, just to add all confluences together? And as I always usually say, one line will do it. Can I understand if we've broken structure on the 15-minute time frame? So we had session lows in the market here, and then as a result of that move yesterday, we have a clear break of structure towards the downside. So very much so, if price returns back to this 15-minute order block, that for me is going to be a very attractive looking short position. Now, in terms of the consistency throughout my trading, look at the same position that I've taken on Gbpcad. 15-minute time frame, structure towards the upside. You see my illustration: structure points, key structure points, break of structure. After break of structure, 15-minute order block, lower time frame, break of structure, and the short position down. So once I go to EU, we have exactly the same now. 4-hour order blocks now available, structure point, break of structure, waiting for price to return back to that 15-minute order block for a short down. It's rinse and repeat of the same repeatable process over and over and over again until you get bored of trading your strategy. So that's EU, that's what I'm forecasting today. Now the other question that it can be said is, would I take a long position? Well, perhaps. As I've said, we do have elements supporting the long position. We are going to be looking to trade out of a daily order block towards the upside, so that's a given. That's certainly in favor. Now, in terms of our targets, although we are not using those EMAs in favor, just as I've used the 4-hour EMA for a target on Gbpcad to manage my position, I will be doing the same here if I'm going to be looking to take a long position on EU. Another reason why I wouldn't mind taking an EU long is the fact that after a low in the market, what am I expecting? I am indeed expecting, after this low, I'm expecting a lower high. So I am expecting price to want to return back up to these areas. However, as I've mentioned before, forecast element of a trader plus the trader elements. So the technicals are telling me perhaps price may want to return back up to these elements, but it's the trader element within me to then understand whether or not it makes sense and what's the structure points going against me in the immediacy. So what I'll be looking at the moment on EU is, first and foremost, we have that 4-hour order block to the bottom left-hand chart on the 4-hour time frame where price has come down into. However, it doesn't necessarily mean I need to be taking long positions on the immediacy. I need to understand what price action is doing and structure points to be broken. So if I get rid of that now, and I can understand that after this low, we are potentially searching for a lower high for a lower low continuation. So the only way for me to have the full confidence I'm not going to be taking an immediate position when price is still yet to be developed is understand, first of all, points in the market where I need to see broken, points in the market where I need to see price go down into. That looks good in the immediacy. Now I understand that's quite far-fetched and looking. However, if you return back to Gbpcad and understand all the elements that we had to wait for yesterday to happen, we wanted price to break down on the 4-hour. We wanted structure to be broken to the downside. We wanted price to return back to the 4-hour, to the 15-minute order block to take the short. Why is it then can we not wait for exactly the same on EU? So I understand as an intraday perspective trader, most traders want to trade immediately, but we have to understand the phase in the market play that we're in. We're very much so in a downtrend. Therefore, do I need to be buying whilst price is evidently in a downtrend? No. We need to wait for price to be developed first and foremost. We need to see price to go into our refined areas. And just to lean on that and add slightly into it, if you're going to put all that effort into marking your charts and doing your daily chart analysis, then why are you not relying on them? Why are you not waiting for those areas in the market to be tapped? Why are we not waiting for reactions to come out of those markets and then execute accordingly? So that's my plan of action on EU. EU longs particularly, and EU shorts favourably. While we're here, let's have a look at AU as well. So AU, very, very, very easy to mark up AU. Very much so short bias, and I have been for feels like a very long duration of time. High time frame weekly order block, waiting for price to come out of that and roll towards the downside. Refined area within that weekly order block. Here we are on the daily. As a result of a couple of good days in terms of short and breaking structures on that daily time frame, we do have another daily order block slightly lower than this current daily order block. However, when we revert to our 4-hour time frame, we have very clear breaks of structure as well in that 4-hour time frame. So really AU just waiting for price to want to return back to those key points of interest before taking the short. And the reason why I like this 4-hour order block is, first and foremost, it is the only 4-hour order block in this immediate leg that could well be making after that low, lower high, lower low. So I'd like to see if price wants to come back up to this for an opportunity to make that lower low in the market. And of course we are supported short by that 4-hour 50 EMA, and then as we wait for price to come back up to those to this area, the daily 50 EMA will start hopefully to gravitate back down towards the point of interest where we'll be looking to short from, giving us additional confidence. And then, much like on Gbpcad and the other pairs discussed, what structure doing. So price on the 15-minute time frame was clearly making higher highs, higher lows, higher high, confirmed higher low. Therefore, this becomes a key structure point. I did not manage, or I wasn't able to take a short position at all, regardless of understanding where I believe price was going. I simply couldn't take it. We didn't have a break of structure point at all. Therefore, I wasn't prepared to take any aggressive positions on AU because I recognize I am very much so sell bias, and I didn't want that to lead my trading. Just because the technicals say something, I need the technicals to do one thing, and I need myself as the technical trader to understand another, and don't be pushed towards seeing positions just because I want them to be there. So therefore I was very strict, and as I said, I was traveling. While I was traveling, more often than not, I will only take textbook positions because I understand I'm traveling. I'm not fully focused on the charts, therefore textbook positions that just show up on the opticals, not even so much based on structure, you can just see when they look right. I'm waiting. So here's a key structure point. Now, break of structure, what do we have? A low created. After that low, where am I looking for price to gravitate towards? Back up to those highs by way of order block selection. Do I have an order block? Yes, I do. 4-hour order block supported short by 4-hour 50 EMA. How's the performance of that EMA? Well, we were respecting it towards the down, so we had a little bit of a hold up. We broke below. That was the first sign just here that we could well be ready. And after that low in the market, low, lower high, lower low created. So as I said, wasn't able to get in when price was doing this just here. That was the break prior, and now we're just waiting to see if price is going to want to gravitate slightly back up towards those highs before taking the short position down. So performance for our 50 MA. Now price is broken below it. I'm expecting price to want to gravitate back up towards it, find liquidity slightly above it, and you see the positions of that 4-hour order block and the 15, and then wait for price to come up, look for a lower time frame break of structure and short that position down. So that is a couple of the favorites team. That's almost 20 minutes. I'll keep it there. As I've mentioned, busy day, probably not going to be able to open the laptop for at least a couple of good hours. But I wish you all very well on your trading journey. I shall seek to post some charts as and when I can. But until then, all the very best in your trading journey. Do take care. And that's Charles.